Gary Mitchell stood at the back of the crowded auction hall on Station Erebus 7, watching alien species of every kind push and shove for better views. The air smelled of metal and strange spices. His hands shook slightly as he checked his credit reader for the third time. 250 credits. That was all he had left in the entire galaxy. His mining ship needed repairs. His processors were breaking down. His food supplies were running low. He needed help, and he needed it cheap. The legal kind of help cost thousands of credits per month. He did not have thousands. He barely had hundreds. Next item, the auctioneer called out in a bored voice. The creature had 4 arms and purple skin. Its translator box crackled with static. Caliph female. Age 24 standard years. No combat training. No useful skills documented. The crowd went silent. Then someone laughed. Then another. Soon the entire hall filled with mocking sounds. Gary pushed forward to see better. On the raised platform stood a female alien, her head down and shoulders hunched. She had pale blue skin and long silver hair that fell across her face. Strange silver markings covered her arms and neck, glowing faintly in the harsh lights. She wore torn gray clothing that looked too big for her thin frame. Caliph? Someone shouted from the crowd. Those are the warrior race. Why does this one look half dead? Defective? Another voice called out. Probably sick. The auctioneer waved one of its 4 hands dismissively. Property comes as is. No refunds. No guarantees. Starting bid, 500 credits. Silence filled the hall. Nobody moved. Nobody raised a hand. Gary knew about Caliph. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Caliph. They were 7 feet tall when fully grown. They had incredible strength. They lived for battle and honor. They hired themselves out as mercenaries and bodyguards across 1,000 worlds. A healthy Caliph warrior could cost 10,000 credits just for a single-month contract. This female on the platform did not look like those warriors. She looked small, maybe only 6 feet tall. She looked weak. She looked like she might fall over if someone breathed on her too hard. 400, the auctioneer said, lowering the price. Still nothing. 300. The crowd remained silent. Some people were already walking away, heading toward the exits. 200 credits. 200 for quick sale. Gary looked at his credit reader again. 250 credits total. If he spent 200, he would have 50 left. 50 credits might buy food for 2 weeks if he was careful. It might buy basic fuel. It might keep him alive long enough to mine one more asteroid field. But if he bought this Caliph female, even a defective one, she could work. She could help process, or she could help with repairs. 2 hands were better than 1, even if those hands belonged to someone the whole galaxy called Unwanted. Going once, the auctioneer droned. Gary raised his hand. His heart pounded in his chest. The auctioneer's eyes focused on him. 200 from the human in the back. Any other bids? The crowd turned to look at Gary. Several aliens laughed. One large creature with too many teeth shook its head and muttered something in a language Gary did not understand. But the translator box caught it anyway. Stupid human. Broken Caliphs are dangerous. She will kill him in his sleep. Going twice, the auctioneer continued, clearly wanting to finish this sale and move on to better merchandise. Gary kept his hand up. His mouth felt dry. What was he doing? Everyone else knew something he did not. Everyone else could see this was a terrible idea. But he needed help. He needed someone, anyone, to keep his small operation running just a little bit longer. Sold to the human for 200 credits. The word sold echoed through the hall. Gary walked forward on shaky legs. He pressed his thumb to the payment scanner. 200 credits transferred from his account to the station's auction house. The numbers on his reader dropped. 50 credits remaining. That was his entire fortune now. The auctioneer gestured toward a side door. Collect your property at processing. Next item, please. Gary walked through the door into a dim corridor. The sounds of the auction hall faded behind him. He found himself in a small room with gray walls and a single bench. The Caliph female stood there, still looking at the floor. 2 station guards flanked her, both wearing heavy armor and carrying shock weapons. One guard, a reptilian species with green scales, looked Gary up and down. You are the buyer? Yes, Gary said quietly. The guard made a hissing sound that might have been a laugh. You know what you bought, human? A worker. Someone to help with my mining operation. You bought a broken Caliph, the other guard said. This one was humanoid but with gray skin and no hair. Do you know why she was sold? Gary shook his head. Caliph society casts out weaklings. This one refused warrior training. Refused to fight. refused to follow Caliph ways. Her own people sold her to the station 3 months ago. Nobody wanted her. Too dangerous to keep around but too weak to be useful. The reptilian guard leaned closer. Broken Caliphs are unpredictable, human. They have the strength and speed of their warrior kin, but none of the discipline or honor codes. She might obey you. She might snap and tear your head off. Nobody knows. Gary looked at the female. She had not moved. She had not looked up. She stood perfectly still like a statue. Can she understand us? Gary asked. She has a translator implant, the gray-skinned guard said. She understands everything. She just does not speak. Has not said a word since she arrived here. The reptilian guard removed the metal cuffs from the female's wrists. She is your problem now, human. We wash our hands of this. Do not come crying to station security when things go wrong. Both guards left through a different door. Gary found himself alone with his purchase. His 200 credit investment. His desperate gamble. He cleared his throat. My name is Gary Mitchell. I have a small mining ship docked at Bay 14. You will come with me and help with our processing and ship maintenance. I cannot pay you wages because I do not have any money. But I will give you food and a place to sleep and fair treatment. Do you understand? The female said nothing. She did not look up. But after a long moment she gave one small nod. Okay, Gary said, not sure what else to say. Follow me then. He walked toward the exit. Behind him he heard quiet footsteps. The Caliph female followed at a distance, her eyes still on the floor, her silver markings dim in the corridor lights. Gary wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He wondered if the guards were right about broken Caliphs being dangerous. But he was out of options. He was out of money. He was out of time. This unwanted alien was his last chance. They were both unwanted now, he supposed. Both at the bottom. Both with nowhere else to go. The walk from the auction house to Bay 14 took 20 minutes. Gary walked in front, checking his datapad and trying not to think about the 50 credits left in his account. Behind him, the Caliph female followed in complete silence. Her footsteps made barely any sound on the metal deck plates. When they reached the docking bay, Gary stopped in front of his ship. It was small and old, a mining vessel designed for one person. The hull had patches welded over patches. One engine housing showed scorch marks from an overheating problem he could not afford to fix properly. Paint peeled from the name on the side, Second Chance. This is it, Gary said, turning to face her. Not much, but it keeps flying. Mostly. The Caliph female looked at the ship for the first time. Her eyes were a strange amber color, bright against her pale blue skin. She studied the vessel for several seconds, then gave another small nod. Gary activated the cargo ramp. It lowered with a grinding sound that made him wince. I need to fix that too, he muttered. Inside, the ship was cramped and cluttered. The main cargo hold doubled as a work area. Bins of unprocessed ore lined one wall. Tools and equipment covered every available surface. A small ore processor sat in the corner, its control panel dark. Gary pointed to a door on the left side. That is the crew quarters. Just a small room with a bunk and storage locker. You can sleep there. I sleep in the captain's cabin up front. He paused, suddenly uncomfortable. The door has a lock on the inside. You can lock it whenever you want. I will not bother you. The female walked to the crew quarters door and looked inside. The room was tiny, barely large enough for the narrow bunk and metal locker. But it was clean. Gary had made sure of that before going to the auction. She turned back and gave him a longer look this time. Her amber eyes seemed to study his face carefully. Then she nodded again. Right, Gary said, rubbing the back of his neck. So, the ore processor over there is broken. Has been for 3 days. I have been processing everything by hand, which takes forever. If you could try to get it working while I run diagnostics on the engine, that would help a lot. He expected questions. He expected confusion. He expected to need to explain every detail. Instead, the Caliph female walked directly to the ore processor and knelt down beside it. She examined the control panel for a moment, then opened the access hatch underneath. Gary watched her for a few seconds, then headed toward the engine room. He had his own problems to deal with. The primary coolant system had a leak somewhere. He had been searching for it for 2 weeks without success. Hours passed. Gary crawled through access tubes and checked every pipe joint he could reach. Sweat dripped down his face. His hands got covered in grease and coolant residue. The leak remained hidden, slowly draining his coolant reserves and threatening to overheat the entire engine. He finally gave up around midnight and crawled out of the access tube, exhausted and frustrated. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked back to the cargo hold, expecting to find the Caliph female asleep in her quarters. Instead, she was still at the ore processor. The machine was now running, its control panel lit up and displaying normal operation readings. 3 bins of ore that had been sitting unprocessed for days were now sorted and ready for sale. The female was currently feeding raw ore into the intake hopper with smooth, efficient movements. Gary stopped and stared. "You fixed it?" She did not look up. She did not speak. She just continued working. Gary walked over and checked the control panel readings himself. Everything looked perfect. Better than perfect, actually. The processing efficiency showed 94%, which was higher than it had ever been when the machine was new. "How did you do this?" Gary asked. "This machine has been broken for days. I tried everything." The female finally paused. She pointed to a small component inside the open access hatch. Then she made a gesture with her hands, twisting them in opposite directions. The phase regulator was installed backwards? Gary leaned down to look. She was right. The component had been put in wrong, probably during the last repair he had attempted. He had never even thought to check the orientation. "I am an idiot." The female's lips twitched slightly. It was not quite a smile, but it was something. Then she went back to work. Gary watched her for a few more minutes, fascinated. She moved with a kind of quiet grace, her movements precise and careful. She did not waste any motion. She did not make any mistakes. The ore flowed through the processor in a steady stream. "Thank you," Gary said softly. "Get some rest when you finish that bin. Tomorrow we need to move to the asteroid field and start mining." He left her working and headed to his own cabin. He fell asleep almost immediately, too tired to worry about broken caliphs or dangerous purchases or any of the warnings the guards had given him. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Gary would wake up and find work already started. The ore processor ran constantly. The cargo hold got organized. Tools got cleaned and properly stored. The female never spoke, but she worked harder than any person Gary had ever met. On the 4th day, Gary was in the engine room again, still hunting for that coolant leak. He had torn apart half the engine housing without finding it. His frustration was reaching a breaking point. "Problem with subsystem valve junction 7, a quiet voice said behind him. Gary jerked in surprise and hit his head on a pipe. He turned around, rubbing his skull. The Caliph female stood at the engine room entrance. It was the first time she had spoken. Her voice was soft and had a slight musical quality to it. "What did you say?" Gary asked. She pointed to a section of the engine he had not checked yet. "Subsystem valve junction 7. Seal is damaged. Microfracture causing slow coolant loss." Gary grabbed his diagnostic scanner and crawled over to the junction she indicated. He ran the scanner over the valve assembly. There, in the seal housing, a hairline crack showed on the scanner display. So small he would never have found it without knowing exactly where to look. "How did you know?" Gary asked, turning to face her. She did not answer right away. She seemed to be considering whether to speak again. Finally she said, "Engine design is old. Common failure point in this model series. Read about it." "Read about it where?" She pointed toward the small shelf in the corner of the cargo hold where Gary kept his technical manuals and reference books. "You read my repair manuals?" She nodded once. Gary realized he had not seen her sleeping much. He had assumed she was resting in her quarters when he was asleep. But maybe she was doing something else. That night, Gary could not sleep. Around 2 in the morning he got up for water. The ship was dark except for a single light in the cargo hold. Gary walked quietly toward it. The Caliph female sat on the floor, surrounded by books. She had pulled out every technical manual, every physics text, every engineering reference Gary owned. Some were open to specific pages. Others were stacked neatly beside her. She read with intense focus, her amber eyes moving rapidly across each page. Her silver markings were glowing. Not the dim light they usually showed, but bright enough to cast shadows. They pulsed gently in rhythm with her breathing, creating patterns across her arms and neck that were beautiful in a strange way. Gary stood in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt. He watched her read a book on advanced propulsion theory, something he himself barely understood. She turned pages quickly, absorbing information at an incredible speed. Finally, she sensed his presence and looked up. The glow from her markings faded immediately. She started to close the books, looking like she had been caught doing something wrong. "No, it is okay," Gary said quickly. "You can read whatever you want. I'm just surprised. Those are not easy books." She looked at him for a long moment. "You are surprised because I am supposed to be defective." It was the most words she had said at once. Gary walked into the cargo hold and sat down across from her, leaving plenty of space between them. I am surprised because nobody told me you were educated, Gary said carefully. They said you had no useful skills. But you fixed my processor in a few hours. You found an engine problem I had been searching for weeks to locate. And you are reading advanced physics at 2 in the morning. She looked down at the book in her hands. Caliph are supposed to be warriors. I wanted to be an engineer. My people said this made me broken. Defective. Unwanted. Well, Gary said slowly, I think they were wrong. Her amber eyes met his again. This time they showed something that might have been surprise. Or maybe hope. It was hard to tell. Get some rest, Gary said, standing up. But you can read these whenever you want. Consider them yours too. He walked back to his cabin, leaving her alone with her books. Behind him, the soft glow of silver markings resumed in the darkness. 2 weeks passed. The mining operation improved dramatically. Gary and Kira worked side by side, processing ore and making repairs. She no longer kept her eyes down all the time. She spoke more, though her words were still careful and quiet. One morning, Gary made breakfast for both of them. Simple food, nothing fancy, but he made 2 plates instead of 1. He set them on the small table in the cargo hold. Sit down and eat with me, Gary said. You do not have to stand over there. Kira hesitated. She looked at the table, then at Gary, then back at the table. I am property. Property does not sit at tables with owners. You are crew, Gary corrected her. Crew sits wherever they want on my ship. She slowly approached the table and sat down. Her movements were stiff, like she expected him to change his mind and yell at her. But Gary just started eating his breakfast and asked her opinion about which asteroid field they should mine next. After breakfast, as they worked on sorting ore, Kira suddenly spoke. Why do you treat me this way? Gary looked up from the scanner he was calibrating. What way? Like I am a person. Not property. Not broken. Not defective. Gary set down the scanner and thought about his answer. Because I know what it is like to be mocked for your choices. Back on Earth, I had a good job offer with a major mining corporation. Safe office work. Good pay. Comfortable life. I turned it down because I wanted to explore. I wanted to see the galaxy and mine asteroids and be free. And people mocked you for this? Kira asked. My family stopped talking to me. My friends said I was throwing my life away. My father told me I was an idiot who would die alone in space. Gary laughed, but it was a sad sound. Maybe he was right. Here I am, broke and alone, flying a ship that barely works. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, on my world, females are trained as warriors from age 5. We learn combat, strategy, weapons, honor codes. I tried to be what they wanted. But I was terrible at fighting. I did not want to hurt others. I wanted to build things, not break them. I wanted to understand how machines worked. I wanted to study the stars. What happened? Gary asked gently. My family was shamed. A Caliph who refuses to fight is worse than a Caliph who dies in battle. They tried to force me. They beat me. They locked me in training rooms and would not let me leave until I attacked the instructors. Her silver markings flickered dimly. I never did. I just stood there and took the punishment. Eventually they gave up. They declared me defective and sold me to the auction house. Gary felt anger rise in his chest. Not at Kira, but at the people who had treated her this way. You are not defective. You are brilliant. In 2 weeks, you have improved this operation more than I managed in 2 years. But I cannot fight, Kira said quietly. I am not what a Caliph is supposed to be. Good, Gary said firmly. Because I do not need a warrior. I need someone smart. Someone who can fix engines and process or and read physics books at 2 in the morning. Kira's markings glowed a little brighter. She almost smiled. That evening, Gary played music while they ate dinner. Old Earth songs from centuries ago, music he had grown up with. Acoustic guitars and piano melodies filled the cargo hold. Kira stopped eating and listened with complete focus. What is this? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. Music. Do you like it? It is beautiful, she said softly. So much emotion and simple sounds. Caliph music is all drums and war chants. Nothing like this. Gary smiled. This is my favorite song. It is about someone finding home after a long journey. They listened together in comfortable silence. Gary noticed Kira's silver markings pulsed gently in time with the music, creating a light show across her arms. Your markings do that when you are happy? Gary asked. Kira looked down at her arms, seeming surprised. Yes. I cannot control it. It is why my people knew I was not suited for combat. A warrior must hide emotions. My markings always revealed what I felt. I think they are beautiful, Gary said honestly. Kira looked at him with those amber eyes and something passed between them. An understanding. A connection. Two people who had been rejected by their worlds, finding acceptance with each other. The moment was broken by an alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the ship. Gary jumped up and ran to the control console. What is it? Kira asked, following close behind. Proximity alert. 3 ships approaching fast. Gary pulled up the scanner display. 3 vessels, smaller than his but faster and heavily armed. Pirates. They must have been watching the station looking for easy targets. The communication system crackled to life. A harsh voice filled with static spoke. Mining vessel second chance, power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Surrender your cargo and credits. Resist and we will destroy you. Gary's hands shook as he checked his ship's systems. He had no weapons. No shields worth mentioning. No way to fight back or escape. The pirates were faster and could catch him easily if he ran. How much do we have? Kira asked calmly. 23,000 credits worth of processed ore. 2 weeks of work. Gary felt sick. If he lost that cargo he would have nothing. He would be finished. Do we have any weapons? No. This is a mining ship. I have a hand laser for cutting or samples but that is it. The pirate ships moved closer. Gary could see them on the external cameras now. Ugly vessels covered in weapons and armor plating. Let them board, Kira said quietly. What? They will take everything. They might kill us. Let them board, she repeated. Her voice had changed. It sounded harder now. Colder. Stay in the cockpit. Lock the door. Do not come out until I tell you. Kira, I cannot let you face them alone. You said yourself you cannot fight. She looked at him and for the first time, Gary saw something dangerous in her amber eyes. Something that reminded him she was Caliph, warrior race, no matter what she preferred to be. I said I did not want to fight, Kira corrected. I never said I could not. Before Gary could argue she pushed him toward the cockpit. Go. No. Trust me. Gary stumbled into the cockpit. He heard the door lock behind him. Through the security cameras, he watched Kira walk calmly to the cargo hold and wait. The pirate ship docked with a heavy clang. The cargo bay door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 3 figures entered, all wearing armor and carrying weapons. They were different species, scarred and dangerous looking. The leader, a reptilian creature with yellow eyes, laughed when he saw Kira standing alone. Where is the crew? I am the crew, Kira said simply. You? A female Caliph? Alone. The pirate laughed harder. This will be easy. They advanced toward her. Kira did not move. She stood perfectly still, her silver markings beginning to glow brighter and brighter. The pirates raised their weapons. Then Kira moved. Gary had never seen anything move so fast. One moment she was standing still. The next moment she was among them like a storm. Her hand struck the leader's wrist and his weapon clattered to the floor. She spun and kicked the second pirate so hard he flew backwards into the wall. The third pirate tried to shoot her, but she was already behind him, her arm around his neck in a hold that made him drop his weapon and gasp for air. 10 seconds. That was all it took. 3 armed pirates lay on the floor, groaning in pain or unconscious. Kira stood over them, breathing calmly, her silver markings blazing like stars. She spoke into her wrist communicator, the one Gary had not even known she was wearing. This is the mining vessel second chance to pirate vessels. Your boarding party has failed. Leave now or I will disable your ships as well. There was a long silence. Then the pirate ships began moving away, their engines flaring as they fled into deep space. Gary unlocked the cockpit door and walked into the cargo hold on shaky legs. The 3 pirates were tied up with cargo straps, still groaning. Kira stood nearby, her markings slowly fading back to their normal dim glow. You said you could not fight, Gary managed to say. I said I did not want to, Kira corrected again. Fighting causes pain. I do not like causing pain. But I will protect what matters to me. She looked at Gary when she said it. Her amber eyes were soft again, all the danger gone. Gary realized something important. Kira was not weak. She had never been weak. She was gentle by choice, not by limitation. There was a huge difference between those two things. Thank you, Gary said quietly. You saved everything. You gave me a reason to, Kira replied. You treated me like a person. Like I had value. Like my choices mattered. I will not let anyone take that away. The morning after the pirate attack, Gary woke up with a decision already made. He had thought about it all night, lying awake in his cabin while the ship drifted through empty space. What he was doing was wrong. He knew it now. He had known it for a while but had been too afraid to face it. He found Kira in the cargo hold, working on a new modification to the ore processor. She looked up when he entered, her amber eyes curious. "I need to talk to you," Gary said. His mouth felt dry. "It is important." Kira set down her tools and gave him her full attention. Her silver markings flickered slightly, responding to some emotion Gary could not quite read. Gary pulled out his datapad and called up the legal documents. The ones that said he owned her. The ones that made her property instead of a person. He had not looked at them since the day he bought her. Looking at them now made him feel sick. "I am setting you free," Gary said. "Right now. No more slavery. No more ownership. You are a free person." He pressed his thumb to the datapad, authorizing the release. The documents changed from red to green. Legally, Kira was no longer his property. She could leave whenever she wanted. She could go anywhere. She owed him nothing. Kira stared at the datapad. She did not speak for a long moment. Her markings pulsed rapidly, brighter than Gary had ever seen them. "Why?" she finally asked. "Because it is the right thing to do. Because you are not property. You never were." Gary took a breath. "I also want to offer you something else. Equal partnership in this mining operation. 50-50 split of all profits. Equal say in all decisions. You would be a co-owner of this ship and this business." He pulled out another document, one he had prepared during the sleepless night. A partnership contract. Fair terms. Equal rights. Everything legal and proper. Kira looked at the contract. She read every word carefully, her eyes moving down the screen. When she finished, she looked up at Gary with an expression he could not quite understand. "I refuse," she said quietly. Gary felt his heart drop. "You refuse the partnership? That is okay. You are free either way. You can leave and find better work. You deserve better than this old ship and—" "No," Kira interrupted. "I refuse to leave. But you are free now. You can go anywhere." "I do not want to go anywhere." Kira's voice was firm. "This is the first place I ever felt valued. The first place anyone treated me like I mattered. You saw me as a person when everyone else saw me as broken and defective. You gave me space to read and learn and be myself. Why would I leave that?" "Because you could have more," Gary insisted. "You could work for a real company. You could earn real money. You could be property again?" Kira's amber eyes were intense. "Different kind of property maybe, but still property. Corporations own their workers in different ways. They own their time, their ideas, their lives. Here I am free in the ways that matter. I work because I want to. I stay because I choose to." Gary did not know what to say. He had expected her to leave. He had expected to be alone again. The thought had hurt, but he had convinced himself it was necessary. "I will accept the partnership," Kira said. "Equal partners. But not because I need it. Because you offered it with respect. That means something." She pressed her thumb to the datapad, signing the contract. Just like that, they were partners. Co-owners. Equals. Gary felt relief flood through him. He had not realized how much he wanted her to stay until she said she would. Over the following weeks, their operation transformed. Kira's technical innovations increased their efficiency by 40%. She redesigned the ore sorting system, improved the engine cooling, and created a new scanning method that helped them find richer asteroid deposits. Other miners in the area started to notice. Word spread about the small ship with the incredible success rate. Some came to trade. Others came to ask advice. A few came just to see if the rumors about a human and a Caliph working together were true. Gary found himself watching Kira more and more. The way she concentrated when solving problems. The way her markings glowed when she was excited about a new discovery. The way she hummed along to Earth music while she worked. The sound of her rare laughter when something amused her. He realized his feelings had changed. She was not just a partner. She was not just a friend. She was someone he thought about constantly. Someone whose happiness mattered more than his own. Someone he wanted to spend every day with, not out of necessity but out of choice. The realization terrified him. What if she did not feel the same way? What if she stayed only because this was convenient? What if he ruined everything by saying something? Gary kept his feelings hidden. He focused on work. He tried to pretend everything was normal. But Kira noticed. She always noticed. "You are different lately," she said one evening as they ate dinner together. Quieter. Distant. "Are you unhappy with our partnership?" "No," Gary said quickly. "Everything is great. The operation is successful. We are making good money. I am very happy with how things are going. But something is wrong, Kira insisted. Her markings dimmed slightly. Did I do something to upset you? No. You are perfect. That is the problem. The words came out before Gary could stop them. He immediately wanted to take them back, but it was too late. Kira tilted her head, confused. I do not understand. How is being perfect a problem? Gary stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Forget I said anything. I'm just tired. Silence filled the cargo hold. Gary heard Kira stand up and walk toward her quarters. He thought she was leaving, but she stopped at the doorway. I am making something for you, she said softly. A gift. It is not finished yet, but I will show you when it is ready. She disappeared into her quarters before Gary could respond. 3 days later, Kira asked Gary to come to the cargo hold. She had been spending all her free time in her quarters with the door closed. Gary had heard strange sounds through the walls, like grinding and polishing, but he had not asked what she was doing. When he entered the cargo hold, he found Kira standing next to the table. On the table sat something covered with a cloth. I made this for you, Kira said. She seemed nervous. Her markings pulsed rapidly. I'm not sure if you will like it. I have never made art before. But I wanted to try. She pulled away the cloth. Gary stopped breathing. On the table sat a sculpture about a foot tall. It was made from minerals and metals from different asteroids they had mined. Blue crystal formed the base, representing space. Rising from that base were 2 figures, abstract but clearly meant to be humanoid. One was made from pale metals, representing a human. The other was made from blue minerals with silver veins running through it, representing a caliph. The 2 figures were not standing apart. They were reaching toward each other, their hands meeting in the center. Where they touched, the metals and minerals mixed together, creating something new. Something beautiful. Something that was neither human nor caliph but both at once. Around the base, Kira had engraved words in English, 2 worlds. 1 home. Gary stared at the sculpture. His throat felt tight. His eyes burned. He had never received a gift like this. Had never even imagined someone would care enough to create something so meaningful. I wanted to show you what this means to me, Kira said quietly. You and I, we are from different worlds. Different species. Different cultures. Everyone said we could not work together. Everyone said I was broken and you were foolish. But we proved them wrong. She pointed to where the figures' hands met. We are stronger together than apart. We create something new, something better. You gave me a place to belong. I want you to know that I chose to stay. Not because I have nowhere else to go. But because this is where I want to be. Gary picked up the sculpture carefully. It was heavier than it looked, solid and real. The craftsmanship was incredible. Every detail was perfect. She must have spent hours on this. Days maybe. Kira, Gary said, his voice rough with emotion. This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me. Her markings blazed bright, responding to his words. You really like it? I love it. Gary set the sculpture down gently and turned to face her. I love everything about it. And I need to tell you something. I have been trying to hide it, but I cannot anymore. He took a breath, gathering courage. My feelings for you have changed. You are not just my partner. You are not just my friend. You are someone I think about constantly. Someone whose happiness matters more than anything. Someone I want to spend my life with, if you would want that too. Kira's amber eyes went wide. Her markings pulsed so brightly they lit up the entire cargo hold. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. Finally she said, I was hoping you would say that. I've felt the same way for weeks now. I was afraid to tell you because I did not want to make things complicated. I did not want you to think I stayed because of obligation or gratitude. You stayed because you wanted to, Gary said. I stayed because I love you, Kira corrected. I love working with you. I love talking with you. I love the way you see me as a person, not as what I am supposed to be. I love that you play earth music and share your books and treat me as an equal. I love everything about being here with you. Gary stepped closer. Can I hug you? Kira smiled, the first real smile he had ever seen from her. Yes. He wrapped his arms around her carefully. She was taller than him, stronger than him, but she leaned into the embrace like it was exactly what she needed. Her silver markings glowed warm against his skin. They stood there together, 2 people from different worlds, finding home in each other's arms. Gary and Kira stood in the cargo hold, still holding each other. The ship drifted quietly through space, the stars outside the window shining like distant promises. Gary felt complete in a way he had never felt before. Like all the pieces of his life had finally fallen into the right places. Kira pulled back slightly, her amber eyes meeting his. "There is something you should know," she said softly. "About my markings." Gary glanced at her arms and neck where the silver patterns glowed brightly against her blue skin. "What about them?" "Caliph markings respond to emotions, but they do more than that. When a Caliph finds someone they could bond with for life, someone who could be their mate, the markings glow differently. Brighter. Warmer. It is something we cannot control or fake." "I have noticed they glow around me," Gary said. "I thought it was just because you were happy." Kira shook her head. "They glow this way only around you. They have been glowing like this for months now. Since the night you told me I could read your books. Since you started treating me as an equal. Since I realized you saw me for who I really am." Gary felt his heart race. "Months? You have felt this way for months and did not say anything?" "I was afraid," Kira admitted. "I thought maybe you only saw me as a good worker. A useful partner. I did not want to risk losing what we had by asking for more." "I was afraid of the same thing," Gary said with a laugh. "We are both idiots." Kira laughed too, and the sound filled the cargo hold with warmth. "Yes. We are both idiots together." Gary took her hands in his. "So what do we do now?" "I have never dated anyone, let alone someone from another species. I do not know the rules." "There are no rules," Kira said. "We make our own rules. That is what being free means." Over the next few weeks, they learned what it meant to be together. They learned each other's habits and preferences. They learned to communicate without words sometimes, just through looks and gestures. They learned that love could be simple and complicated at the same time. Gary learned that Kira loved earth music even more than he thought. She would listen to songs dozens of times, trying to understand every lyric and emotion. He learned she was terrible at cooking but excellent at fixing anything mechanical. He learned she had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard and made him laugh until his sides hurt. Kira learned that Gary talked in his sleep sometimes, mumbling about asteroid coordinates and engine repairs. She learned he was generous to a fault, always willing to help other miners even when it cost him time and money. She learned he had doubts about himself, about whether he was good enough or smart enough, even though he was one of the most capable people she had ever met. They learned they fit together in ways that made sense even when nothing else did. 3 months after Gary's confession, they returned to Station Erebus 7 to sell their ore and resupply. As they walked through the station corridors, other species stared at them. A human and a Caliph walking side by side, clearly together. It was unusual enough to draw attention. Gary noticed some of the stares were judgmental, disapproving. But he also noticed something else. A few beings watched with what looked like hope. Like seeing Gary and Kira together meant something was possible that they had thought impossible. That evening they sat in a small station cafe, drinking terrible coffee and watching ships dock and depart through the large windows. "I want to ask you something important," Gary said, setting down his cup. "And you can say no. It will not change anything between us if you do." Kira tilted her head, curious. "What is it?" "I want to marry you. I know humans and Caliph do not usually marry. I know there might be legal complications. I know people will judge us. But I want everyone to know you are my partner in every way. Not just in business. In life." Kira's markings blazed so bright that people at nearby tables turned to look. She did not care. She leaned across the table and kissed Gary right there in the public cafe in front of dozens of witnesses. "Yes," she said when she pulled back. "Yes, I will marry you." They arranged a simple ceremony 2 weeks later, back on their ship. They could not afford anything fancy and they did not want anything fancy anyway. They invited the small crew of miners and traders they had befriended over the months. About a dozen people showed up, representatives of 6 different species. Station Erebus 7 had an official who could perform legal bonding ceremonies for mixed-species couples. She was an elderly Centaurian with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She stood in their cargo hold, now cleaned and decorated with simple lights, and spoke about the courage it took to love across boundaries. Gary wore his cleanest clothes, which was just a simple shirt and pants. Kira wore a dress she had made herself from blue fabric that matched her skin. Her silver markings glowed like starlight. They spoke their vows. Simple words. Promises to support each other, to respect each other, to build a life together among the stars. When the official declared them bonded, their small audience cheered. The celebration was modest. They served food and drinks. Someone brought a music player and they danced in the cargo hold. Gary taught Kira how to dance to slow earth songs, and she taught him a Caliph tradition of synchronized movement that required trust and coordination. Later, when the guests had left and they were alone again, Gary and Kira sat by the window watching the stars. "We should expand," Kira said suddenly. "Expand what?" Gary asked. "Our operation. We have enough money now to buy another ship. Maybe two. We could hire others to help us." She paused, then added, "We could hire people like me. People who were cast out or rejected. People who need a second chance." Gary thought about it. It was a risk. Expanding meant more responsibility, more expenses, more things that could go wrong. But it also meant helping others the way he had been helped. The way Kira had been helped. "Let's do it," he said. Over the next year they built something bigger than just a mining operation. They bought 2 more ships. They hired 6 crew members, each one rejected by their own societies for various reasons. A Drellian scientist who was too curious. A human woman who was too stubborn. A Vexian engineer who was too creative. A Mantari pilot who was too cautious. Each person came aboard expecting judgment and found acceptance instead. They worked hard because they wanted to, not because they had to. They stayed because this collection of misfits felt more like family than their original homes ever had. The company grew slowly but steadily. They called it Second Chance Mining, after Gary's ship. The name attracted more outcasts and rejects. People who had been told they were not good enough, not strong enough, not whatever enough. People who just needed someone to give them an opportunity. Gary and Kira ran the operation from their original ship, now upgraded and improved. They still worked the mines themselves, refusing to become the kind of bosses who only gave orders from comfortable offices. One evening, 2 years after they first met, Gary and Kira sat in their cargo hold organizing equipment. The ship was quiet. Their crew was off duty, sleeping or relaxing in their own quarters on the other vessels. Gary picked up an ore sample and examined it under the light. "You know what I was thinking about today?" "What?" Kira asked, not looking up from the circuit board she was repairing. "That day at the auction. When I bought you for 200 credits. Kira did look up now, her amber eyes amused. "And? Best 200 credits I ever spent," Gary said with a grin. Kira threw a small piece of foam padding at him. It bounced off his chest. "You are the worst bargain hunter in the entire galaxy. You could have negotiated down to 100 credits. Maybe even 50. Then I would have 50 more credits," Gary pointed out. "And I would be worth even less," Kira countered, but she was smiling. "You were never worth what they said you were worth," Gary said, becoming serious. "You were priceless then. You are priceless now." Kira set down her tools and walked over to him. She sat beside him and rested her head on his shoulder. Her silver markings glowed softly, contentedly. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Buying a broken Caliph at an auction? Everyone said you were making a mistake." "Every single day," Gary said. Kira sat up, hurt flashing across her face. "Every single day," Gary continued, "I regret that I had to buy you at all. That you were ever in that position. That your people treated you that way. That the galaxy made you feel unwanted." He took her hand. "But I do not regret a single moment since then. I do not regret knowing you. I do not regret loving you. I do not regret building this life with you." Kira's markings blazed bright. She kissed him softly. "You have a way with words, human." "I learned from the best," Gary said. "You showed me what words like partnership and equality and love really mean." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching through the window as one of their other ships drifted past on its way to a mining site. The crew aboard that ship was laughing. Gary could see them through the windows. Another group of unwanted people who had found a place to belong. "We did something good here," Kira said. "We built something that matters." "We built a home," Gary corrected. "Not just for us. For anyone who needs one." Kira smiled and stood up, pulling Gary to his feet. "Come on, worst bargain hunter. We have work tomorrow. New asteroid field to survey. New possibilities to explore. New adventures," Gary agreed. They walked hand in hand toward their shared quarters, 2 beings from different worlds who had created something new together. Something the galaxy had said was impossible. Something beautiful and real and lasting. Behind them, the sculpture Kira had made sat on a shelf in the cargo hold. 2 figures reaching toward each other, creating something stronger together than they ever could have been apart. A reminder that being unwanted by one world just meant you were waiting to find another. A reminder that sometimes the best things in life cost almost nothing but are worth absolutely everything. The ship's engines hummed softly as they flew through the endless stars, carrying Gary and Kira toward whatever came next. Together. Always together. Home among the stars.